So, let's talk about Hurricane Katrina, because it really wasn't just a storm, was it? No, it was a catastrophic failure of systems, both the ones we build and the ones found in nature. In this explainer, we're going to break down how a city's one-of-a-kind geography, its flawed defenses, and its deep-seated inequalities all collided to create one of the worst disasters in American history. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to look at how the storm hit the system, what happened when the walls broke, the real anatomy of the impact, and then we're going to ask the tough question: was this actually a man-made disaster? And finally, what lessons can we take from the water? Let's jump right in.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's August 2005. There's this absolute monster of a storm brewing in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's heading straight for a city whose very location makes it a sitting duck for disaster.
First, let's just try to comprehend the sheer force we're dealing with. As Katrina hit the coast, it pushed a wall of water ashore that was up to 8.5 meters high. That's nearly 28 feet. I mean, just picture a wave the height of a 3-story building crashing down. It's almost unimaginable. Now, a surge that powerful would be catastrophic for any coastline, but for New Orleans, it was a truly existential threat. You see, this wasn't just a little bit of flooding. This was an event that threatened to swallow the city whole.
So, what exactly is a storm surge? It's not just a big wave. The best way to think about it is like a massive dome of ocean water being bulldozed onto land by the hurricane's incredibly powerful winds. That's where all the destructive force really comes from.
You really had a perfect storm of risk factors all converging at once. First, you got an absolute beast of a hurricane, a Category 5 at its peak. Then you've got the city itself, New Orleans, which is essentially a bowl, with large parts of it sitting below sea level. And to top it all off, its natural defense system, the coastal wetlands that are supposed to act like a giant sponge, had been severely weakened over the years.
So, all of this was just setting the stage for the single, most critical failure of the whole event. That moment when the city's last line of man-made defense just gave way.
This right here, this is the turning point. The city's floodwalls weren't just overwhelmed, they were fundamentally flawed. Because of serious design errors and unstable soils, the water didn't just go over the top. The walls actually breached. They collapsed, letting the full, raw power of the storm surge pour right into the heart of the city.
And the consequence of that failure was, well, it was almost total. With the floodwalls gone, a staggering 80% of New Orleans was submerged. Remember that bowl analogy? Well, the bowl filled up with water. It's as simple and as horrifying as that.
Now, with the city underwater, the disaster was really just beginning. Let's take a look at the devastating human and economic consequences that rippled out for days, weeks, and even years after the storm. The economic damage was almost impossible to wrap your head around. At $125 billion, Katrina became one of the costliest so-called natural disasters in U.S. history. And that isn't just an abstract number. That's people's homes, their small businesses, the city's port. All of it just wiped out. But as huge as that financial cost was, this number is arguably even more powerful. 1.5 million people were forced to leave their homes. They were scattered all over the country, basically becoming environmental refugees in their own nation, with no idea if they would ever be able to return. You can really see how these impacts split into two categories. On one side, you had the economic losses, the tangible things you can put a price tag on. But on the other, you have this profound social damage. Entire communities just gone, and a painful truth laid bare for everyone to see. This disaster did not affect everyone equally. And this gets to an absolutely crucial point called differential vulnerability. It's a bit of a technical term, but it describes a simple, brutal reality. Your experience of Katrina depended heavily on who you were. The city's low-income residents and communities of color were hit the hardest, often because they lived in the lowest-lying areas and simply didn't have the resources to evacuate. So this brings us to a really tough but essential question. Yeah, the hurricane was a natural event, but was the catastrophe that followed entirely natural? Or how much of it was amplified by human decisions and, frankly, human neglect?
Well, when you start looking at the facts, a very clear pattern of systemic failure emerges. The levees weren't just flawed, they were poorly maintained. The natural wetlands had been chewed up for decades by things like canal construction for shipping and oil exploration. And then, when the storm finally hit, The official emergency response was tragically and unacceptably slow and insufficient. And what this reveals is a really dangerous paradox. A lot of the things that humans built to supposedly protect the city, like those very shipping canals and levees, actually helped to destroy the natural defenses that would have blunted the storm's power, ultimately making the entire region way more vulnerable.
So finally, what did we learn from all this? What are the critical, hard-won lessons from this tragedy that coastal cities all over the world need to pay attention to?
The path forward is pretty clear, even if it's not easy. It means working with nature, not against it, by restoring those vital wetlands. It means investing in robust, modern infrastructure. And critically, it means designing our disaster plans to protect the most vulnerable people first, not last. And this is why Katrina is still so incredibly relevant today. Its lessons aren't just for New Orleans anymore. They're for every single coastal city in an age of rising sea levels and more extreme weather. This is a global challenge now.
Which leaves us all with one final, critical question to think about. We've seen how an entire system, the physical, the social, the governmental, can completely and utterly fail. So take a look around your own community. How resilient is the system where you live? Is it ready?